Good evening, ghouls and fiends, and welcome once again to another edition of the Ministry of Horror. I'm your host, Tezz. We are live on twitch.tv/Tezzius. Welcome anyone watching live, and hello to anyone listening later on podcast platforms. We are once again doing a Thursday stream. I am hitting the road after work tomorrow, so no Friday stream. Does that mean that there won't be a watch party tonight? I don't know. I don't think we did a watch party last Thursday show that was, which I think would have probably been the last show we did, actually, thinking about it. Yeah, it probably was. Probably because we couldn't find anything suitable on Prime available to stream. Whether that is the case tonight, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a bit of an action-packed show, which we'll talk about in a moment. But part of me is thinking, no, it's Friday tomorrow. Who gives a fuck about going to bed at a reasonable time on a Thursday when it's a Friday? I can deal with being a bit tired potentially. So yeah, maybe. I think it's really going to depend on A, what time we finish the show, and B, if there is anything that takes our fancy on Prime. We did a watch party on Friday just gone, and we watched Homeschool or Student Bodies. That was, I mean, again, it's a film I talk through the entire fucking time, so I can't really critique it too harshly. Let's be honest here. It was okay. It was lower budget in terms of the presentation than I was expecting, but I didn't really have anything to base that expectation on. I hadn't seen the trailer. I guess just the artwork made me feel that it was maybe a bit of a studio film. I don't think it was. We got the chats popping off. Let's have a look at the live chat. Gruff, good evening, Tez. Hey, Gruff, how's it going, dude? I should give a shout out here. Gruff has recently again become a father. Congratulations to Gruff and Carol Ann on the birth of their young daughter. And I know that you're gonna introduce her when she's out of age to the horror world, and we'll have another horror head in the community. But once again, Gruff, congratulations there. We've also got Anna Gray, 54, is a first-time chat. Hey, Anna Gray, 54. Hopefully you're doing well. Thank you for joining the show. I'm doing good. Hope you are too. And Fran the Cannon, yes, it was Phantasm Thursday last show. Yes, yeah, it was a Thursday one. We talked about Phantasm, and you know what? I enjoyed it. I knew I was going to, because I do enjoy the Phantasm films that I'd seen, 1 to 3. 4 I thought was boring, as discussed. But I was very surprised with the emotional roller coaster that is Phantasm Ravager, or Ravager. You know, it's one where if you do end up at some point, if you've never seen it before, never seen the Phantasm films, if you do end up putting it on, as I said at the time, just stick with it, because the low production values at the very start of the film, when you know how it was made, it will make sense. And I think by the end of it, there's just a lot of charm and there's a lot of heart there. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. Anyway, since doing the show last weekend, I went to the cinema, and we will be talking about that film during the reviews. We've got 2 reviews tonight, and the main discussion of tonight's show is going to be the Omen franchise. I don't have any Omen adjacent music. I mean, that's nothing to do with the Omen, but that's the closest we could get. I was tempted to see if I could get away with playing the very opening to the Ghost song Year Zero. And you know what? I probably could just get away with the opening bar, pause it, and then the second bar. Maybe I will prepare that. Yeah, we'll do that when we get to the Omen. We'll try our luck when we get to discussing the Omen. So yeah, I went to the cinema. I've also watched another film. I did watch that in parts. Due to time availability and whatnot, and also due to my enjoyment of the film, not to bury the lead too much on what kind of score you can expect on that one. But we'll be talking about that a bit later on. Now, before we get into things and we do a little preamble, we have a little chat and check in on the chat and all that stuff. There's obviously going to be a bit of a crossover here on this show with wrestling fans, as Ministry of Horror started out as part of the MOS Network, offshoot of the Ministry of Slam, now known as the Wrestling Arena. Now, we will confirm shortly in the Discord, no doubt, but next week there will be another live the Wrestling Arena TWA show with me and Paul Barrow. Potentially this time next week. We will confirm, though, in the Discord and let you know all about that. But where there's this wrestling overlap, some of you listeners, viewers, may watch wrestling, may watch a show called, a company called AEW, who have a premium show on a Wednesday night called Dynamite, who, it was only last night in America or Fight TV subscribers. So in the UK, we'll be seeing it Friday night on ITV4. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want a potential spoiler to one of the matches that is horror adjacent, maybe mute for 30 seconds or skip ahead 30 seconds to a minute maybe. But here's your little pre-warning. Spoilers incoming. Last night's Dynamite had Leatherface. Yeah. And it's causing quite a stir online. I'm finding it quite funny. And I think I would normally, if I wasn't a horror boy, get wrapped up in that stir. Couldn't give a shit. It was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre death match, promotional match because the video game's coming out, between Jeff Jarrett and Jeff Hardy. Now, there was a lot of lighting issues, which I didn't mind, but there were parts where you just literally couldn't see anything. That was quite poor. And then the commentators, again, not sure if it's during a commercial break or not, because of Fight, you don't really have commercial breaks, other than like 2 or 3 throughout the whole show. There's a lot of, picture-in-picture, whatever it is. Moments where you couldn't see it. But the backstage stuff, I think, does work with someone like Jeff Hardy now, who I've always been a big fan of, but I have been vocal of my criticisms in the last few months, since his joining AEW, and then he obviously had his time off and now is back again. Just they can't go at the same speed that they used to, and obviously he's in his 40s now or 50s, I don't know. But I think when you have these backstage sort of segments or these event matches, it works because it can kind of hide the limitations. But yes, that aforementioned character emerged, and also a title belt was there. And some people have been getting annoyed about that. I don't think it's going to be an officially recognised belt. It's purely promotion for the video game, which comes out tomorrow. Will I pick up the video game? I will play it when it's either on a really good sale, which the PS Network is generally pretty good at getting games on sale. It won't be for 3 months, 3 to 6 months at the earliest. But if it's on sale and it's like 15 quid, sub 20 quid, sure. And you might be thinking, fucking hell, you're a bit of a cheapskate. It's a purely multiplayer game. It might have a single player mode shoved in there like the Evil Dead did, but it's a multiplayer game in that style, in the Dead by Daylight style. And it's not, I just don't find myself drawn to that kind of game. I don't have that kind of gaming community where I can say, hey, guys and gals, let's jump online for an hour or so and play this. You're playing it with randoms, or you might be able to arrange a one-off match. So not for me. I'm not going to buy it at release at full price. The last game I bought at release at full price was AEW Fight Forever, and I think I'm in a similar boat to a lot of people where I've not really played it since that first sort of week. It's not a 50 quid game. It's not, and we can make all the excuses we want, but it's not. The fact that at release the DLC, the only DLC so far was FTR, for £10 basically, meaning It is a 60 quid game if you want your tag champions in there. Anyway, non-wrestling fans will be going, what the fuck? This is meant to be a horror show. I digress. I apologise. We'll move swiftly on. But the main point of Leatherface was in, again, spoilers, if you've jumped past the 30 seconds and I've said it again. Yeah, Leatherface was on AEW TV. I didn't mind it. A lot of people kicked off. I think it was quite funny because when the zombies appeared in WWE, Jericho said it put the wrestling business back 30 years. Whether he was just playing a character or not, I don't know. Who knows? But it was just quite funny that then they'd done the exact same thing. So don't throw stones in glass houses, I guess, is the main takeaway there. Let's have a quick look at the chat before we start jumping into the wrestling news. I'm not going to play the jingle just yet because we're going to look at the chat, so I've buried the lead a little bit there. So, don't talk to me about tiredness, the Gruff says. Oh, God, I can imagine. The Gruff, thank you, Defo. Wrestling horror for sure. A bit of a horror as a kid, never did me no harm, exactly. Actually, Jaws did scare me of getting in the water and still does to this day, so ignore that. Did you see Lawrence's post in the Discord about meeting for All In? Are you still up for meeting too? Of course. I think we were going to discuss on next week's show anyway, like some sort of plans to kind of get them out there, which I guess depending on the reach of the show could be crazy or could be not, about meeting somewhere, because me and Victoria will be going to All In. I believe the word on the street, although has anyone received their tickets yet? I don't know if they're digital or physical, but let us know if you've received your tickets. I believe the word on the street is that the gates are open at 3:30 and 0 hour starts at 5. So I guess we probably want to be in the area by about like 3 to start whatever kind of queuing up system, because it's going to be 80,000 people. So I imagine meeting somewhere around like 1 or something like that. It's probably going to be wise, because me and Victoria, not to go on too much of a divergent, honestly, horror fans, we will get to horror shortly. We want to try out apparently this bakery in London that does the biggest croissants, and I love a croissant. Vix loves a croissant too, so Ministry of Croissants coming this fall. But yes, we will look to definitely still up for meeting up. I know Victoria would like to meet the MOS Network people too, and people obviously also the fans of this show too. I haven't seen it yet, but knew about the match, Gruff says, in regards to Texas Chainsaw Death Match. WCW had RoboCop, WWE had Zombies, and AEW have Leatherface. And WCW also had Chucky creeping out, Rick Steiner, Fran said. And I guess, Chucky also did appear in NXT more recently. Fran, forgot about Gruff says, forgot about that. I have my digital tickets. Going to be an early start for the meetup. PM me this bakery address. Yeah, well, I'm going to have a look into this, where it is. But honestly, the croissants are like, no joke, how far apart my hands are, which is, I guess, shoulder width. Big. So you got digital tickets. Right, I will have to check with Victoria whether it was digital or physical. I've no idea, and see where they're at, just to be sure. So, let's get started with the wrestling. Not the wrestling. Fuck! All this wrestling talk has seeped into my tiny little brain. Let's start with the horror news. I don't know how well they synced up. I noticed, actually, I listened back to the recording from last week, and apparently for the first half of the show I had my desktop audio muted on OBS, so you wouldn't have heard that this is the news music. You'd have just heard me go, "This is the news." Very embarrassing. That tends to happen. That tends to happen when I don't look at my fucking monitors. So apologies for that to anyone who missed out on the "This is the news" music. I've had a little spin on it just then with Friday the 13th. Anyway, let's stop badgering on about bullshit. Ghostwatch star Michael Parkinson has passed away. This is reported by BloodyDisgusting.com. John Squires. Bloody Disgusting has learnt this afternoon that legendary broadcaster Michael Parkinson has passed away at the age of 88. A statement from his family reads, after a brief illness, Sir Michael Parkinson passed away peacefully at home last night in the company of his family. Horror fans will know Michael Parkinson best as the presenter of BBC's TV movie Ghostwatch, a controversial mockumentary that shocked and terrified audiences back in 1992. So I've never seen Ghostwatch. My friend and colleague and former two-time guest on the Ministry of Horror, Peter Goddard, is a big fan of it. And a while ago, I know that Arrow were releasing a new Blu-ray. I don't know if it was a 4K jobby. Might well have been release of Ghostwatch. And I had pre-ordered it, but this was going through one of those phases where I pre-order a whole bunch of things going, yeah, that looks cool. Yeah, that looks cool. That looks cool. And then as it gets closer to it, I'm just like, fucking hell, this is going to be quite expensive. My bank balance is always depleting. That tends to be the case. I get paid. I have about a weekend or a week of, oh yeah, I'm going to buy stuff. And then after that, it's like, okay, I've got to get by now for 3 weeks. Life. So I think it was a case of pre-ordered, payday. And as it got closer to release, I thought, yeah, maybe not. Fran, the can in the chat, bet that was during a watch party. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I have a habit of opening up Amazon, whether that's to look at what's on Freevee or whether that's to go, oh, that looks good. Pre-order that. And then it's the existential crisis afterwards, or the reviewing of the costs and the anticipated money coming out of my bank that I then go, fuck no. I have still pre-ordered though the special edition release, 4K release of It Follows, which has been pushed back I think to September. I probably need to check when that comes out because that's going to be expensive. But yeah, sad news, Michael Parkinson. I mean, 88 was good innings. I believe, yeah, I've heard good things about Ghostwatch in that it was aired on BBC One, took the appearance of a news broadcast, as this says here on the write-up. And it presented itself as being genuine. And the fact that it had Michael Parkinson and other presenters who are genuine presenters gave it that air of authenticity, and it had these fake phone calls where they have a phone number on the on the screen, but then they'd have these fake call-ins kind of added to the authenticity that they were kind of going for. So but I think the other reason as well that I cancelled it is because I thought, do you know what, is this going to be one of those things where if you didn't see it at the time or near enough around the time that it just doesn't quite hold up? You know, and it might be a case of, oh, we can appreciate the impact it had, but, you know, I don't know. I can't say that fully because I've never watched it. But, yeah, R.I.P. Michael Parkinson. Next up, we have 4 new horror movies that are releasing this week, including Dracula Untold, the Dracula Untold director's first feature in 10 years. Again, John Squires, Bloody Disgusting. Here's all the new releases coming for August 15th to August 20th. Also don't forget the Texas Chainsaw Massacre the game is available this Friday. So first up, set on Halloween 1938, the new movie from Dracula Untold director Gary Shaw is titled Haunting of the Queen Mary, and the horror movie officially set sail on Friday, August 18. The film will be released in select theatres as well as on demand. The film is based on the real-life ocean liner, said to be one of the most haunted places in the world. Shooting took place aboard the actual Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. A luxury ocean liner graced by generations of the rich and famous, HMS Queen Mary is now celebrated and feared as one of the world's most haunted places, says Time magazine. In the early 20th century, shipping lines competed to be the fastest to complete a transatlantic crossing, but among the most famous record holders was the RMS Queen Mary, which held the record for 14 years, but now stands encased in concrete at Long Beach, California, where it's been used for many years as a luxury hotel and tourist attraction. The ship has a lengthy history of visitors reporting seeing ghosts and visions in its rooms and on its decks, making it the perfect setting for paranormal goings-on the big screen. The upcoming horror film is a psychological horror which explores the mysterious, violent events surrounding one family's voyage on Halloween night 1938 and their interwoven destiny with another family on board of the infamous ocean liner in the present day. The two families will become violently entangled in the haunting ghost story. Alice Eve, Joel Fry, Nell Hudson, William Shockley, and BAFTA Award winner Lenny Rush star in Haunting of the Queen Mary. Okay. There's a trailer out now. I've not watched it yet. Decent cast. It's been shot on location, so it could be kind of interesting. I'm down for a new ghosty sort of film, you know. They generally have a much higher hit rate, I would say, than exorcism-based films. And I only mention exorcism-based films because obviously the Exorcist Believer is out in 2 months, and we've talked before about the limitations, not the limitations, but the I suppose the lack of standout exorcism films, you know, in terms of just not following the same old tropes over and over again. Writer-director Stuart Thorndike's 2014 film Lyle introduced a contemporary riff on Rosemary's Baby. Thorndike's latest, Bad Things, continues the filmmaker's horror explorations of motherhood, this time through Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Bad Things premieres on Shudder on Friday, August 18. The film tells the story of a group of friends whose trip to a snowy resort for a weekend getaway devolves into a psychological tailspin and ends in bloody nightmare. With Bad Things, I wanted to create a world of women and non-binary people who shake off polite conditionings and finally roar, Thorndike said in a statement. Where are all the female Travis Bickles and Jack Torrances? Bad Things answers that. At the heart of Bad Things is a dark celebration of motherhood and all its splendid viscera. Shudder was the perfect partner for this tale of female rage, Thorndike also said. It stars Gail Rankin, Harry Neff, Annabelle Dexter-Jones, Rad Pereira, Jared Abrahamson, and Molly Ringwald. Okay, quite a stacked cast for Bad Things. I've not seen his previous film, Lyle. But it is an interesting question, like, where are the female Travis Bickles and Jack Torrances? I'm sure that there are some out there, but, you know, none spring to mind, you know, in this instance. Oh, fair enough. Fran in the chat, I quite liked Dracula Untold, but it's more action than horror, really. Yeah, it's, it does kind of fall into that bracket very much of mainstream appeal, universal monster films of more recent times. I'm not going to throw Last Voyage of the Demeter into that because I haven't seen it. I know it's been released at quite a bad time for a horror film with Oppenheimer and Barbie taking over the multiplexes. But yeah, a lot of the more, you know, the last 20 years of any sort of universal monster films have very much had a bit more of an action focus with a bit of a horror tinge to them. So yeah, Dracula Untold, it's a fine film. I enjoyed it enough. Next up, a brand new take on the classic tale of Frankenstein. Sundance horror movie Birth/Rebirth is on the way from IFC Films and Shudder, arriving exclusively in theaters August 18. The company's preview, the standout directorial debut from Laura Moss, reimagines Mary Shelley's classic horror myth Frankenstein with such a contemporary understanding that it becomes something exciting, terrifying, and singularly new. In the film, Rose, played by Marin Ireland, is a pathologist who prefers working with corpses over social interaction. She also has an obsession, the reanimation of the dead. Celie, played by Julie Reyes, is a maternity nurse who has built her life around her bouncy, chatterbox 6-year-old daughter, Lila, played by AJ Lister. When one tragic night, Lila suddenly falls ill and dies, the two women's worlds crash into each other. They embark on a dark path of no return, where they will be forced to confront how far they are willing to go to protect what they hold most dear. It's been officially rated R by the MPA for disturbing material and gore, some sexual content, language and nudity. Brendan J. O'Brien wrote the script. Next up, director Alex Herron's Dark Windows introduces a conventional slasher setup that pits a masked killer against vacationing teens, but teases a potential twist. What if the teens aren't so innocent? Brainstorm Media's horror thriller will release in select theatres and on demand this Friday, August 18. The film is set to take audiences on a ride of passion, loss, terror, and horrific, unthinkable ways of seeking revenge. In Dark Windows, a group of teenagers take a trip to an isolated summer house in the countryside. What starts as a peaceful getaway turns into a horrific nightmare when a masked man begins to terrorize them in the most gruesome ways. Written by Wolf Craft, Dark Windows stars Anna Ballart, Annie Hamilton, Rory Alexander, Joel Shamadson, that's like a Norwegian surname, and Morten Holst. I like exploring the choices that young people make and the consequences of those choices, said Heron previously. In Dark Windows, Tilly and her friends have made one of the worst choices of their young lives and are about to face the most extreme punishment for it. Okay, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of extreme, unthinkable, horrific, and I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of giving me this sense of like an Eden Lake or a Speak No Evil. It's certainly setting it up to be an intense sounding experience. Whether that's a good way or not, I mean, sometimes situations where they are, punishments, retribution, torture, whatever, it's just kind of done for the sake of it, and it can just be a bit like, oh, this is just kind of dehumanizing. This isn't really, there's nothing to take from this experience. But if done well, it can be deeply unsettling and put you on the edge of your seat and really want you to have those moments when the characters, the protagonists can fight back or get some retribution. I say that, but unfortunately in the films that I mentioned, there is no retribution. Spoiler alert, the bad guys win. But sometimes that's life, isn't it? I get that. But at the same point, when you're viewing something, sometimes, I don't know. I see the merit for not always having a happy ending, but I also get that, you don't want to just watch a film to be fucking depressed for an hour and a half and feel a bit upset. I don't anyway. Not for me. But that sounds interesting. I definitely am going to have to keep that on my radar. Next up, Encounters. Netflix docuseries from Amblin TV will explore otherworldly phenomena. From Steven Spielberg's Amblin Television, Vice Studios and Boardwalk Pictures comes the docuseries Encounters, which is headed to Netflix soon. Deadline was the first to report the news this afternoon, writing that Encounters has landed at Netflix and will launch the four-parter on September 27th, 2023. The four-part docuseries from director Jon Motzkin is said to explore four extraordinary true stories of encounters with otherworldly phenomena. Deadline details each episode tells a single story. Strange lights in the sky over small-town Texas, submersible spacecrafts haunting a coastal Welsh village, an alien encounter with the schoolchildren in Zimbabwe, and non-human intelligence reportedly interfering with a nuclear power plant in Japan. Told from the perspective of first-hand experiences in the places where the sightings occurred and guided by scientists and military personnel, the series highlights the profoundly human impact on these encounters, on lives, families, and communities. That sounds hell of interesting, honestly. I mean, it's an Amblin Television production. There's always a quality there. I mean, that's a big chunk of everyone's kind of childhoods, really, of this generation. That is Amblin Films, and for me, I'm looking to try and watch more docuseries or documentaries because it's been a little while. I don't know at what point I kind of started dropping off documentaries and docuseries, and Netflix always generally did some pretty good ones. I mean, I loved the first series of Making a Murderer. Series 2, obviously the difficulty is series 1, they had like 15 years worth of story or events to recap and put their spin on it. I'm not going to say any documentary always has it's leading you in a certain way, whether that's 100% the correct factual findings or whether it's, well, here's our narrative and we are going to put it through, put it across in this way. Who knows? But that's always something you have to take into consideration when watching a documentary is Is it a fully rounded perspective on all the events with all those people involved? Who knows? And more recently, I watched the one with the Murtaugh murders or something. It was this family in like rural America who are very rich and quite powerful, and there's a lot of shit went down in regards to an accidental death, and then trying to get that framed onto someone else to protect the family and all that stuff. That was quite good, but for a while I found it difficult to jump into documentary series, whether that's my attention span or, I spend a lot of time on Instagram Reels, which I'm now quite aware that put the phone down when you're watching TV or engaging in some form of media. I don't have my phone on me when I'm reading a book, so why would I do that when I'm putting on a documentary? So I need to get out of that mindset of having my phone with me, or at least looking on social media when I'm watching something. But I've tried recently to watch the Waco documentary series on Netflix. They've now got a thing about how people join cults, like a series about cults, and I always find cults quite interesting because I think, how the fuck do people end up in a cult? But obviously, it's not as easy as simple as that. So this sounds pretty intriguing. Yeah, I'm gonna have to keep an eye out for that. That's end of September Encounters. Let's move on. What else have we got? So, Series 3 of Chucky will premiere on October 4th. There is an announcement video that you can see online. So, again, blowdiscussion.com. Due to the ongoing WGA and SAG strikes, we couldn't be sure if Chucky Season 3 would be premiering this Halloween as originally planned, but today brings very good news. First reported by Entertainment Weekly, Chucky Season 3 will premiere on October 4th, 2023. EW notes, EW has confirmed that Series 3 of Chucky will premiere 9 p.m. ET PT, October 4th, on Sci-Fi and USA. Season 3 episodes will be available next day on Peacock, which is also screening Season 1 and 2. You can text Chucky at your own risk at 201-500-3347. Season 2 won't arrive on Peacock until September 4th. There's a little update on this. There's an official announcement video for Chucky Season 3, which confirms that Jennifer Tilly will be back in the new season of Don Mancini's hit series. Yeah, there's some kind of spoilers for Season 2 going into that there, which I won't go into. Partly because I didn't finish Season 2. I watched Season 1 and I thought it was fine. Chucky is a series that it's fun, but I didn't grow up watching Chucky, so I don't have a close affinity like I do with Halloween and some other things. And I think the films are fine. They vary in quality. I think 1 to 3 are pretty good. Bride of Chucky was the first one I saw. That's fun and entertaining. And then it drops off a cliff, and then it kind of comes back, but it's okay. And then there's the remake, which is fine. The remake's fine, and then we've now got the series. And Series 1, it was okay. It was okay. I liked the fact that they weren't retconning everything. The fact that it's a new series that connects to the films, but does so in a way that it's for a TV audience. It doesn't need to go, well, you have to have watched the films to understand who these people are. It does a nice way of introducing returning characters as and when they appear. Obviously, it helps having seen the films because it is connected to all of the films. So I will say I appreciate that they don't do the thing of, well, people won't have seen all these films, especially, Curse of Chucky or Cult of Chucky. Let's ignore those. No, it doesn't do that. Everything is connected. And as it kind of should be, the only thing that's not connected is the remake, because that's technically a separate continuity, really, isn't it? So that's good in its regard. Series 2, though, I couldn't really give a shit about. I tried. It was one of those shows that the only thing I can liken it to is the point when I dropped off watching The Walking Dead. Now, obviously, The Walking Dead, I was maybe 7 seasons or 8 seasons deep into that at the time. So the fatigue played a part, of course, sure, but it was then getting a bit more repetitive, and we've discussed the point that I dropped off and the repetitiveness that I was finding. But more so, it was also the similar feeling with that I then started getting through series 2 of Chucky, where I was just kind of like, what am I getting from watching this? It's not as if I'm like, oh, okay, where's the story going? Oh, that was shocking. I'd be watching the season 2 episodes as they appeared on my Sky Planner, and then, another one's downloaded. All right. Don't need to watch that now. It didn't create that kind of urgency of, I'm into this story. I want to continue it. And so, I kind of thought, there's not enough hours in the day. I'm not really that engaged with series 2 of Chucky. I think I got maybe 2/3 into it. Fell off a cliff in terms of my attention. But if people are enjoying it, series 3 coming out soon. Right, let's have a quick look at the chat before we move on. Vic's in the chat. Hey gang, sorry doing my usual thing of multitasking while listening. Big congratulations to Gruff. Hope little girl is doing good, man. Also, if anyone else is interested in cults, there's an awesome podcast called I Joined a Cult. Worth a listen. Interesting. I like a good podcast. Gruff, I feel like I shouldn't like the Chucky remake, but Mark Hamill is so good. Yeah, it's a good performance. And, Aubrey Plaza, I think she's great in pretty much everything she does. It's a good cast. It's enjoyable. Also, Gruff says, hey, Vix, thank you. Lily's doing great, thank you. Giving her lungs a good workout. Fran, Cult of Chucky's kind of vital. It brings in the multiple Chucky aspects and sets up the series. Yeah, Cult of Chucky, I mean, like I say, it doesn't ignore any of the sequels. And for a TV series on like a big network, it's quite brave, because you could easily go, well, those ones were, at least in the UK, I don't know about America, straight to DVD. Who's going to have seen those? It's kind of almost to an extent relying on the fandom being the focal point. But like I say, the series does do a good way of, by introducing you to a new character and you're following their story, and then the greater story of the Chucky films is kind of interspersed into the narrative as it goes on. Works quite well. Okay, now gaming news. New Ascension update to Phasmophobia brings revamped equipment tiers and progress system. So for video game fans, Phasmophobia fans, this comes from Blood Disgusting. We're still waiting on the official release date for Phasmophobia to be coming to consoles, and with Kinetic Games' recent Ascension update for the PC version, it's going to make it that much harder. The developer announced today version 0.9.0.0, which introduces the brand new progression system for Phasmophobia, as well as equipment tiers and various other enhancements and fixes. I do actually own Phasmophobia, because I think it was on like a really cheap sale once. And yeah, I haven't played it. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, I only know a couple of people PC gaming wise. My good friend Jamie, who I do the Ministry in Action, and Ministry of Dragon show with. But he doesn't really play horror games. We play Age of Empires more than anything. And also, it would be good fun to play that, I think, because I'd probably be a scared little bitch. But yeah, it's a purely multiplayer type game. I don't have the gaming group for that. But for fans, there is a new update coming. Also, I should mention, we won't go into it too much because it's just the headline really, but Alan Wake 2 has been bumped to October 27th. So for fans of Alan Wake, the sequel has now been moved back to late October. Works out for Halloween, I guess. Love is the Monster. A couple retreat turns into a nightmare. Turns nightmarish in upcoming Finnish mythology thriller. Up next, from Sound of Violence filmmaker Alex Neuer, is Love is the Monster, a new thriller that draws on Finnish mythology. Deadline reports today. Madeline Zimmer of Doom Patrol and Twin Peaks, and Leonardo Nam, Werewolf by Night and Westworld star. And production is currently underway through a SAG-AFTRA interim agreement. Love is the Monster centers on a couple, Anna and Justin, who, rocked by infidelity, attend an exclusive couples retreat in Finland under the golden rays of the summer's midnight sun. They joined other couples from other parts of the world to experience the transformative teachings of the shaman and healer, Tina, inspired by the ancient Finnish goddess of love and fertility, Lempo. But the idyllic setting soon takes a turn. Intriguingly, Wikipedia offers this description about the goddess Lempo. After Christianity came to Finland, the reputation of Lempo worsened. It is portrayed in the folklore usually as an erratic spirit, as love can be capricious, even dangerous, and it could even take control of a being and turn them into destruction. It's safe to assume that Love is the Monster might showcase Lempo's dangerous side. Then again, the catchy title says it all. The upcoming thriller is written by Noya Hanu Akia and Blair Bathory. Blair Bathory sounds familiar. It's interesting. I can't remember if I've seen Sound of Violence. I think it might be on my radar on Shudder, but I don't actually think I have gotten around to watching it. Interesting. Right. Already talked about that. What else have we got left to talk about? Okay, so this is kind of interesting. So if people don't know, you know, I talk on the show about my... Oh, sorry, I got distracted. I talked about my book reading, and you know, I'm on like 15 or on my 16th. I might actually be on my 17th book of the year, which, considering it used to take me about 3 to 4 months to read one book, pretty pleased about. But one of those books that I read from a recommendation, I think I might have seen it on Instagram, maybe, is a book called Foe by Ian Reid. The apocalyptic thriller. There's now an apocalyptic thriller based on Foe that is set for a theatrical release. This comes from Megan Navarro, Blood Disgusting. Expect a twisty apocalyptic mindbender upcoming apocalyptic thriller Foe, based on best-selling author Ian Reid's novel. He also did I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Today, Amazon Studios announced a Halloween season release for the adaptation. It's set for US theatre release on October 6th. I can never pronounce her fucking name. Saoirse Ronan. Don't know. S. Ronan, Paul Mescal, and Aaron Pierre star in the twisty apocalyptic marital thriller. The first look image above previews Ronan and Mescal as the central married couple. The film is described as a haunting exploration of marriage and identity set in an uncertain world. Hen and Junior farm a secluded piece of land that has been in Junior's family for generations, but their quiet life is thrown into turmoil when an uninvited stranger shows up at their door with a startling proposal. Directed by Garth Davis and co-written by Davis and Reed, Foe's mesmerizing imagery and persistent questions about the nature of humanity and artificial humanity bring the not-too-distant future to luminous life. So, I thought the book was decent. It's quite a small book. I got through it in probably about 6 days or so. Probably about 6 days. It was definitely less than a full week. It has got a twist. I wouldn't necessarily say I saw it coming. But in terms of when things started to become a bit more apparent, I was like, okay, I think that's what it is. Not necessarily a negative, but it's interesting. I don't know if it's because of the size of the novel, but just because I'm used to reading Stephen King massive book stops. But it did feel more like a short story, like a novella, than a novel. I'm sure it was, 200 pages or 180 pages or something. But it's decent. I'll give the film a watch. I'm always interested in see adaptations of books I've read. When people kick off going, oh, I can't believe they've done it, it's never going to be as good as the book. Oh, probably not. But for me, it's interesting to see how they attempt to adapt it, because some things, when you read them, you think, well, how the fuck would you ever adapt that on screen? Interesting. Right, now, last bit of news. Monarch, Legacy of Monsters. Legendary's Monsterverse series previews first look images. Godzilla will return in an upcoming Apple TV Plus series, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, from Legendary Television, a small-screen expansion of the MonsterVerse that will center on Godzilla and other titans. Today, the streaming service unveiled a first-look image to accompany the announcement of the series' new title. The highly anticipated sci-fi drama series will include 10 episodes, which Apple TV Plus promises are coming soon. No release date just yet. In the series, following the thunderous battle between Godzilla and the Titans that leveled San Francisco and a shocking revelation that monsters are real, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters tracks two siblings following in their father's footsteps to uncover their family's connection to the secretive organization known as Monarch. Clues lead them into the world of monsters and ultimately down the rabbit hole to Army Officer Lee Shaw, played by Kurt Russell and Wyatt Russell, taking place in the 1950s and half a century later when Monarch is threatened by what Shaw knows. The dramatic saga, spanning 3 generations, reveals buried secrets and the ways that epic, earth-shattering events can reverberate throughout our lives. Anna Sawai, Kiersey Clemens, Ren Watabe, Mari Yamamoto, Anders Holm, for fans of Workaholics or This Is Important podcast, that's very cool, Joe Tippett, Alyssa Lewowski star alongside Kurt Russell and his son Wyatt Russell. Interesting. Now, I don't have Apple TV Plus. I've only ever had it when I get like Sky give you 3 months free, or, you know, sometimes Apple have a thing. I generally find when I've had Apple TV, I've gone, right, let's watch Ted Lasso. Okay, that's all right. It's a bit schmaltzy, it's a bit on the nose and cheesy, but it's okay. What else? And I've tried to watch some of their comedy series, and they all have a very similar sort of tone, which isn't my sort of comedy. Hard to describe, what that means, but not really kind of clicking with me. And outside of that, there's never anything that's kind of tickled my fancy. Now, I do know that Apple TV Plus has a show called Silo, which looks pretty good. There's also some sort of fancy sci-fi show. I can't think of the name for it now, but a second series has just come out. It's just coming out. And these are the sort of things where I'm just like, why couldn't you be out when I had Apple TV? I'm certainly not paying for another subscription, but this looks pretty cool. The image artwork for Godzilla looks pretty awesome, actually. Right, now before we move on, let's just have another quick look at the chat, see where we're up to. So yeah, Victoria Lily is such a lovely name too. Didn't mention the name in case you wouldn't want it shared, but I'm glad you did because now I get to tell you what a beautiful name it is. Vixel says, hi Fran, hope we get to see you soon at the meetup. Fran, hope so. I have to try and work out travel details and times. First to work out when I get to London. Job for the weekend. They've also talked about a film which we're going to be discussing shortly, so I won't touch on that just yet. Oh, I have. You've got Victoria, you've got Apple TV Plus, have you? Wowzers, trousers. My goodness. All we need to do is get TNT Sport, and then you can be bored by me watching football every weekend. It depends if a Man United game's on or not. If it's not, then I don't bother. But awesome. Okay, we're gonna have to draw up a little list of things on Apple TV Plus. You do now. Oh wow. Oh yeah, because your sister has it, doesn't she? Okay. Well, I hope you haven't just purchased it. I hope if it's a freebie or a family connection. I certainly wouldn't pay for Apple TV Plus unless it's got a lot of really good things on there. So, yes, if people don't know, I will be moving in with Victoria in just over a month's time. And yes, I should be listening to the show downstairs while I'm upstairs recording. You may every so often hear the odd distant sound for bark, and that is most likely her dog Penny demanding some food. Or if someone's gone by outside, they like to do a bit of neighbourhood watch. So we're going to get onto our reviews now, and here is our reviews music. Oh, okay. Sorry, the chat is popping off tonight. I can't follow everything. Before we talk about the one of the films which is getting a lot of mentions in the chat, it appears Vix was unaware that Jaws is based on a novel, and apparently there's 8 books. So there you go. I knew that it was based on a novel, didn't know it was a series. Anyway, the first film that we are going to discuss in our reviews, I had on my kind of the peripheries of my radar for a little while. I think it came up last year in like news, like new films. I certainly remembered seeing a trailer, or at least seeing that there was a new film from Neil LaBute. We'll look into him shortly, but starring Justin Long. And I've been a Justin Long fan for a while. When I think Justin Long, I automatically think Dodgeball. I think Jeepers Creepers, for better or worse. The film's great. It's just the director. And a host of other things. He's one of those actors who is. Oh no! Oh, so Meg. Sorry. I'll take my eyes off chat for just a moment. But it seems as though Meg is based on novels. Didn't know that. So Justin Long. So whenever he's attached in a film, he's always good in it, or a TV series. He's in a show called Ed. It was one of those comedy dramas that's like, where's the funniness? But it had Justin Long in it as the side character. He's always very endearing, charming, and he's always been associated with horror on the periphery. We talked about JP, Jeepers, JC, I should say. I can't spell. Jeepers Creepers, and as Graf mentions, the one with the walrus. So he has that horror connection. And more recently, his roles have been expanding in terms of he's not just I'm the funny guy, I'm whimsical and I'm, charming, into there being a bit of a darkness to the character. So he had a bit of a surprise role in Barbarian. I watched that knowing absolutely nothing about it, which I still think is the best way to do it. Because I still think it's an excellent film. Some people weren't really too fussed, but his role in Barbarian is that of, you see it's Justin Long and you think, oh, okay, yeah, here we go, yeah, Justin Long. But then there's his allegations against him. It doesn't really seem like his character. And as the film goes on and some of his decisions, you think, God, he is actually, at the heart of him, a bit of a nasty dick. He really is quite self-centered and narcissistic, really. And so, watching this film, which is House of Darkness, 2022 American black comedy horror thriller, he kind of echoes that character a little bit. He stars in this alongside Kate Bosworth. The film was written and directed by Neil LaBute. And apparently, it's a reimagining of Dracula. Oh man, this film is kind of it's kind of shit. Like I did have to watch this in about 3 or 4 different segments. Now, there's a multitude of different reasons why. There's a mixture of my attention span. I probably have got undiagnosed ADHD. Who knows? Maybe it's just caffeine. I don't have that much caffeine. It depends. It depends if I've been to the gym and I've had pre-workout still in my system. That's quite a possibility. But it could be my attention span. It could be I have a habit of, by the time I've got things finished, whether that's some overtime at work, whether that has been trying to get some studying done, because I've still got a couple of exams that I need to try and get this done this year, just as a personal kind of goal, that by the time I have things kind of done and finished and dinner and chatting and blah, 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 that I look at the time and I think, oh man, it's getting close to like 9, or it's gone 9 o'clock. Okay, let's look for a film, start scanning through films. Oh, that's like over 2 hours. No, and blah, blah, blah. By the time I find something that's like an hour and a half and grabs my interest, and ideally I haven't seen it before, I think it's a bit late to start a film now, or I start it and I start thinking, getting a bit bored and it's getting close to 10. I should probably start winding things down and blah, blah, blah. It's a mixture of those and I guess also a bit of boredom. But I did force myself to finish the last half an hour early this week because I really wanted to get it done and get it watched. I want to try and make sure that I don't do overtime every night and allocate one evening a week to watch a horror film, because there's been a few shows recently where I haven't had a new horror film to review, and where maybe that's what's available on streaming, or what's new, or what's out in the cinema that I've been able to get to. A number of different factors can go on to that, and I will say that Shudder recently, they must have listened to the show, because the channel on Prime now once again has a new film section at the top, which it always used to do, and they've had a few new films on there which look kind of interesting. There's a vampire one, there's one called Manfish, there's one about like a creepy sort of doll, or called Communion or something like that. So there's a few different new films that have come onto Shudder recently, which I think I need to sit down and watch that. But I need to get back into the habit of one night a week, just go, right, having dinner, whatever, I'm sitting down at a reasonable time, let's put a horror film on, just block out like 2 hours, and just do that. Because the other reason is we're getting close to October, and now last year in October I did the 31 Days of Horror Challenge, and it was fucking tough near the end, but it was also a lot of fun. So if anyone wasn't watching or listening last year, 31 Days of Horror, I found online, there's a number of different ones out there, a list, not of horror films, but horror types or horror subgenres or horror characters. And it had a different one for each day. So the idea would be vampires. Okay, well, I'll watch 30 Days of Night or Dracula or something. Anthology. Oh, okay, I'll watch VHS. Something like that. And I found that really quite fun and engaging, and it gave me an opportunity to watch favourites of mine that I would categorise as the different days, or newer films that I think, I've been meaning to watch that for a while, let's do that on this day. That kind of thing. Try and be a bit inventive. And yeah, I mean, it did get kind of difficult some weeks if it was a really fucking busy week to allocate that hour and a half to watch a film. And I did have a bit of film fatigue, I guess in November maybe. But it was a lot of fun. And there's a lot of different ones out there. I've seen a few recently that are literally just a list of horror classic films, and it's the classic October month. Thinking, okay, I could maybe do that. Just for, I guess, ease. But I did quite like the challenge of it, of, right, I need to watch a film set on Halloween night. Easy, Halloween. I need to watch one of the sequels. And yeah, some of them were like a franchise sequel or straight-to-video release, things like that. Very interesting. Long and short of it is I need to start getting into watching a new horror film a week. So I've got a bit more content for reviews, but also, got to allocate time for my horror film every so often, in preparation for October when it's just going to get fucking crazy. Anyway, I'm also probably potentially trying to avoid talking about this film because it wasn't very good. So if people haven't seen House of Darkness, after meeting at a bar, Hap Jackson, played by Justin Long, meets Mina Murray, who's played by Kate Bosworth, and they go back to her remote castle-like estate. While Mina is out of the room fixing drinks, Hap calls a male friend to brag about his hookup. Following an evening of drinking, kissing, and couched conversation, Mina begins unbuckling Hap's pants. Mina's sister Lucy unexpectedly interrupts. Hap gets the idea that he might have a threesome with both women. So this is basically just detailing, in a very brief way, what happens in the film, but I will kind of just leave it there. This is a film that I imagine was filmed during COVID. Why do I say that? Well, there is not many characters on screen together at the same time. Could be one indication. The majority of the film is just Kate Bosworth and Justin Long together. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, I mean, why should that necessarily be a negative? Maybe it's more of a conversational sort of piece, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. You can have you can build up tension that way. But I found it just kind of irritating. So, Justin Long is he's the jovial, happy, I'm just trying to get lucky here sort of guy. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And Kate Bosworth it seems very it's obvious very early on that something here isn't quite right, in terms of she is, I don't want to say argumentative because that isn't correct. But have you ever had a situation, guys, where someone just picks up on everything you say? So, for example, Justin Long would say something like, oh, well, I was just fooling around. And then she would, and these aren't lines in the film, let's say, but she would then go, oh, just fooling around, so you think I'm a fool? So that's not verbatim at all, but the sort of thing where you get some people who are very matter of fact, when you could say to them, like, oh, how's it hanging? They'll be like, what do you mean it's hanging? Nothing's hanging. That kind of bullshit where it's just like, fucking hell, tough crowd, like, trying to have a bit of conversation here. Standoffish, I guess you could say. So she's kind of given off those kind of vibes. But then Justin Long, as it comes across, I mean, he's trying to get his end away, which you have to put into perspective that they've just met on this night. She needed a ride home. The gentlemanly thing to do would be like, okay, well, you're only home safe and sound. Could I get your number? Yes, great. No, okay, fine, right. Well, safe. See it. Bye. Move on. But yeah, it's weird. But the majority of the film is them together in a dark room, chatting, and him having these weird little visions. The fact that it's meant to be a reimagining of Dracula, I mean, that's fucking loose. And by the very end of the film, it's just like, it just kind of felt like, oh, well, we better put this scene in. I won't say anything in regards to what happens, but it just kind of felt like, oh, let's put this scene in, then that'll make him happy. It's just a bit of a mess of a film, and it's a shame. Kate Bosworth's a good actress, who, yes, as Franz mentioned, is married as of this year to Justin Long. And Justin Long, like I say, I respect him. I think he's a very funny actor and endearing in any role he plays. Neil LaBute, that's where I recognise the name. He did The Wicker Man. Yes, he did The Wicker Man. Okay. But he also created the TV series Van Helsing, which the first few seasons of that are actually pretty good. I never finished it. But it's not bad, actually. I probably should get back to that at some point. I really can't remember what happened. Oh, Christ, I don't want to talk about this film much more anymore. It's just, it was really boring. And I think my score kind of falls in line with what I saw on IMDb. Like, after finishing the film, and some films on Prime, and this is available on Freevee, which I watch via Prime, shows the IMDb score. And when it popped up, I thought, yeah, that's kind of similar to what I would give, but mine is slightly lower. I'm giving it 4 out of 10. It's got some good actors in it, but just, it's boring. It feels overly long, but it's 88 minutes. So if a film drags and it's less than an hour and a half, then that to me is a bit of an indicator. So I didn't enjoy House of Darkness, which is a shame because I was quite looking forward to it. Next up, our next review, before we move on to our main discussion, as mentioned a number of times in the chat, because we've got some fans in the chat, I watched The Meg 2, The Trench. So me and my lovely girlfriend Victoria went to see this at the weekend. She treated me again to the cinema. She'd previously taken me to see Insidious 2. So this was more her pick, and I thought, you know what? It'll probably be fun, and I've made her watch some of my picks, some of my horror choices. So, you know, it is only fair that I watch some of her picks. And we watched a rom-com called October Kiss, which is a favourite of hers. And then at the cinema, she's very up for watching Meg 2. Now, just to preface that I have now twice watched the first Meg film. So my anticipation for Meg 2 was kind of low, purely because I'm not that fussed with the Meg. And when I mentioned this to Victoria, she was quite shocked because I own it on Blu-ray. To give you a little background for that, back in the day, I would quite often, either with some friends or whatever, hit up a late night Tesco's or a late night Asda, get snacky snacks. The great thing about those superstores that are or were, don't know if they still are, 24 hours, open 24 hours in the weekdays, is you can go and do a shop without other people there. And if anyone, you know, just goes to a food shop during the day, it can be quite stressful if you've got idiots in the shops. And by idiots, I mean when you get people that walk through the doorway with their trolley and they stop right in the doorway to look around. I don't mind you looking around. Just be fucking aware that you've just walked through the doorway and you are blocking the entire doorway. It's things like that where I think, okay, if I'm going, you know, for me, if I'm going to stop, I'm going to move in. Move to the side. Oh, what's this? Let me just adjust my trolley. So I am now on the left-hand quadrant of this aisle or section of the shop. But no, you get people during the day, not to go too much on a rant because it fucking annoys me, who will go, oh, what's this? Move their trolley out so it's going across the aisle to then go, oh, what that? What's up there? And then when you have to, you know, you either have to go, excuse me, which I just end up pushing past in a polite way because I like to talk Billy Big Bollocks, but at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, sorry, excuse me. And then they're like, oh, sorry, am I in your way? What the fuck do you think? Goobers. But I would go to, a big shop at night, and I would always then go and have a look at the film section and go, right, what's new out? What can I pick up on Blu-ray or DVD? And so that's where I'd get some films, and sometimes if I've watched it and not really that fussed with it, I'd then take it to CEX or sell it on eBay. For whatever reason, the Meg has just sort of managed to avoid that and stayed on my shelf. I don't actually know how. I keep forgetting I own it. But I watched it back in the day, thought, all right. I watched it last week ahead of watching the Meg 2 at the cinema, and I again thought, all right. I think for me, it's a shark film. It's a shark film or a shark attack film, action film, over the top because it's a megalodon. That just, I don't think it had that many shark attacks in it, or if it did, they were just quite, because it's not really a horror film. It's a horror film in terms of it's a shark attack film. We've done When Creatures Attack before, but it is a bit more of an action adventure film at the end of the day. So yeah, wasn't really that fussed with the Meg, the first film. So I went into watching this kind of thinking, well, I'll go because it'll be fun, and you know, my girlfriend likes the Meg, so I'm going to go along because she had to watch Insidious, the red door hiding behind her hoodie most of the time. But then I heard that this film is directed by Ben Wheatley, who is a very good British horror director. Some of his features are Kill List, Sightseers, which I really like, A Field in England, which is it's good, it's a bit weird. He's done a few other things like Free Fire, A Field in Free Fire. What else has he done? He did In the Earth as well, which is weird. I thought it was pretty good, but it was a little bit hampered by being a being a pandemic film. Yeah, but it was all right. It was still okay. You know, it was typical Ben Wheatley weird. So I was like, okay, we'll give this a watch. We'll give this a watch. The chat talking about my supermarket rant. Gruff, wow, remind me not to go food shopping in the Gillingham, Dorset area. Well, like I say, the fact is, I'd internally I'd be going, get the fuck out of my way, you fucking dickheads. But externally, I'll just be like, sorry, can I just squeeze past with my trolley? Can I, you know, when you do that kind of like inside voice thing, you know, Oh, sorry. Sorry, I just want to get past him, my trolley. That's me. But internally, I'm just like, you fucking asshole. You motherfucker. Too polite for my own good. As much as I want to be an arse. Fran saying he'll exercise his demons by writing a film about a slasher terrorizing a supermarket. Oh, trust me. It's crossed my mind a few times. It's a very... the Gruff... the Fran also says Night of the Living Bread. That's good. Gruff, this is a very strange film for him to direct. Totally out of his usual stuff. Yeah, we've had a few films recently with traditional horror directors or newer horror directors branching out into mainstream action. I guess it's going to be a good payday for them. And whether that means that they can then become a bit more of an established director in mainstream cinema, fair enough, that's good. Or alternatively, if they then use that scope to then go, okay, I want to get more funding for another horror film, potentially that can work in that way, and that's also good. Oh, and the book that this is based on is also called The Trench, or Meg the Trench. Interesting. Steve Atlan. Very good. So yes, as mentioned, it's a 2023 science fiction action film based on the 1999 novel by Steve Atlan called The Trench, serving as a sequel to The Meg 2018. Stars Jason Statham, Wu Jing, Sophie Kai, Paige Kennedy, Sergio Pellis, Manchetta, Skylar Samuels, and Cliff Curtis. Like the previous film, it follows a group of scientists who must outrun and outswim the titular megalodons when a malevolent mining operation threatens their mission and forces them into a high-stakes battle for survival. Plans for the sequel were announced to be in early development in October 2018 after the box office success of the first film. Wheatley replaced John Turteltaub as director, with the script being written by returning writers Dean Georgiaris, John Hober, and Eric Hober. Filming began in various locations in Asia and the London-based Leversden Studios in February 22, with many of the cast joining the same month until May. In February 22, and many of the cast joined the same month until February 22. It was released for its world premiere at the Shanghai International Film Festival on June 9th, 2023, and was released in the United States on August 4th. The film received mostly negative reviews from critics and has grossed $261.7 million worldwide, which is pretty good. That's double the budget. So... yeah, that's pretty good. I don't know what sort of business the first film did. Okay, first film did 530 million worldwide, but bear in mind this has only been out a week, 2 weeks, something like that. Not bad going. Not bad going. So, first things first, I had a great time watching this. I personally enjoyed it a hell of a lot more than the first film. What I will say, and this should kind of, I guess, whether you've seen the first film or not, I would definitely say it's more emphasized here. Turn your brain off when watching this, and that's not a negative at all. If you watch this treating it like a fun action film from... and I'm going to say from like the 80s and 90s, because I just feel that action films for me, and whether this is just because of the period of growing up, in the 90s and early 2000s, but I felt like the last 10 years or so, 20 years or so, action films haven't really vibed with me in terms of being overtly CGI, everything swinging around super fast, you can't focus on one thing, nothing gets a moment to breathe. Don't get me wrong, this film is incredibly CGI, but the CGI is a lot better than some films. Some recent things, the CGIs have looked fucking terrible. This, I think the CGI is pretty good. I didn't necessarily look at anything in this film and think, God, that looks fucking terrible. I've seen a few films recently. There's a sequel to 47 Meters Down. I think it's called 47 Meters Down Uncaged. Or Unchained. I think it's Uncaged. The sharks look fucking terrible in that film compared to the first film, and I think they had a similar budget. In this, bearing in mind it is a megalodon and it is fucking enormous, looks fine, looks decent. Yeah, there's little creatures called snappers, look pretty good. There is a octopus attack, a giant octopus, which is very good and very creepy. looks fine, looks good. None of the effects look bad in this film. This film looks really good. Whether that was helped that we were watching it on the Sense screen or whatever it was at the Odeon, High Sense or something like that, don't know. But visually, it's a brilliant looking film. Jason Statham is playing Jason Statham, and he does that well. You know, you watch him in The Expendables, which there's a new one coming out. You watch him in anything where he's got to be the action star. He does it well, you know. He is Jason Statham. You could say he's a bit one note in this or in most things. I don't know if he's not had the opportunity to show much range, or I maybe haven't seen him with much range. That's fine. I don't need much range in an action film. He does a good performance. And as mentioned, I think earlier on the chat I spotted, because I sort of tried to avoid... There's some chat about this earlier on, so I thought, I won't read that out yet till we get to it. But the cast in this shine. I don't remember much of the cast. I remember, the first film had Rainn Wilson in it and a couple other characters. And a few of them do return in this one. But they're great. They're hilarious. Let me just see if I can pick them out the cast list. Paige Kennedy as DJ, the engineer, is fucking hilarious in this. I remember him being fairly humorous in the first film. He shines in this film. He is so funny. Pretty much 8 or 9 out of 10 jokes each time of his land. Really good. And he has a good comedic sort of match up with a few different cast members. Specifically, I would say Cliff Curtis as, Mac. James Mac McCready's. They work brilliantly well together. There is a moment when they are they've locked themselves in a room because they've discovered what is going on. I won't say too much. I don't want to give any spoilers away. And DJ comes up with a plan and says, right, we're going to do this. We're going to open the door. We're going to spray pepper spray in their face. I'm going to close the door while they're all disorientated. Then we're going to rush out and we're going to use the cattle prod that we've got to shock them. They use the pepper spray. Mac doesn't wait, and he runs out to use the cattle prod. Without even thinking, he's just run into the direct line of where the pepper spray was, and he's then going, oh god, my eyes, it's so funny. It's the sort of humour where it could so easily just be like, oh god, right, okay, roll your eyes. But Cliff Curtis and Paige Kennedy, they're a great little duo in this. I'd be very much up for seeing them team up in something else, or if there's a sequel to the Meg. I thought they were great. We didn't have a return. There is one character, and this shouldn't really be a spoiler because it's very early into the film, but it's mentioned that Su Yin Zhang has passed away, the mother of the little girl, Mei Ying. It doesn't really mention what caused that, and as far as I'm aware, and she didn't die in the first film. But that felt a bit like, I don't know if maybe she just wasn't returning or if that felt necessary. There isn't any mention in the development that she couldn't return, or maybe that's just how it is in the book. I don't know. Doesn't say anything in terms of production in regards to casting, like as to why she wouldn't be back. But that's a little bit of a shame because she's quite a good character. But the daughter, Mei Ying, she has some funny moments. We've got some interesting baddies in this film. There's some good combat scenes. There's some pretty good fight scenes, like fisticuffs fights. There certainly is the horror here. So this is why I included it in the horror reviews, because it's a horror adjacent film. There is a moment when they come under attack from these snappers when they're on the ocean floor. Again, I'm not going to go too much into detail because I don't want to get into spoiler territory. Those spoilers are normally sort of considered for like the second half of the film or for big plot elements. But some of the characters are in these eco suits running along the ocean floor when these things called snappers emerge, which are like kind of little baby sort of shark type things, but they're not really sharks because their heads are more, I don't know what you'd liken them to. They're quite sort of dinosaur-y looking underwater. And one of them starts trying to bite onto a character's head. They've got these masks on, these like kind of big helmets with glass on for their eco suits. And it did kind of remind me of a scene in Joe Cornish's Attack the Block, which is a British sci-fi horror film, when one of the characters who always wears a motorbike helmet for whatever reason, one of the aliens in that starts trying to bite on his helmet. And I think it does ultimately kill him, but it's one of those good things where you don't need to see the full horror of the thing chomping through their head. It's kind of almost scarier to just sort of see the tension and the fear and just hearing the cracking sound, because you just think, oh god, no, that would be fucking horrible. It's the fact that it seems like it's inevitably gonna happen that makes it scarier than seeing chomp. If it happens as a chomp, it's a moment of, oh fucking hell, that was harsh, and then you move on. But in this similar moment, where you can see that one of these things is trying to bite on this person's mask, some of them end up getting out of this scenario, but as they're running, you can hear the cracking and see the cracking on their mask from where the teeth had penetrated the glass. And things occur from that point that I won't go into. But yeah, it's, as Fran says, shocking scene. I thought it was done really well, though, and I think it's a very... They did it in quite a way, or Ben Wheatley and the editors did scenes like these and some of the attacks later on in such a good way that you have moments where it is a lot more horror than the first film, but it is not visceral in terms where you'd have to put this as like a 15 or an 18. I don't know what the age rating is here. It might be a 15 here, but it's got to have a bit more of a mainstream appeal. And if you start putting bloody gore and violence in it, you're going to inevitably bump the age rating up, which will please more horror fans. But the studios generally sort of think you don't want to get an 18 because then you won't make money. It's not necessarily true. Some films buck that trend and do very well at 18, like Deadpool. But more often than not, it is looked at as no. We want a PG-13, whatever, because the lower the age rating, the bigger the audience grasp is. But I think that they do toe that line pretty well in this. I would definitely say. You have the moments where you think, God, that would be horrible. That's a horrible way to die. But it's not overtly graphic to the extent where it takes away the shock, but also limits the availability of the film. Very well done in that regard. So initially I don't know what score I was going to give this. Like now, the more it's one of those situations where I kind of thought, yeah, it was better than I was expecting, but it's okay. But now that I've been talking about it a bit more, it was a lot of fun. I did quite enjoy it. It's certainly a big step up from the first film because I wasn't a fan of the first film. Yeah, okay. I'm going to give it this score. I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10. I think the fact is, for me, this was fun. I enjoyed it. I had a good time at the cinema. Very fortunate my girlfriend bought our tickets for this. This time though, I picked up the food because I wanted to get the food. I then afterwards said, next time we go to the cinema, we're bringing our own food, because 2 lots of popcorn and drink and a hot dog was 30 quid. And I noted that last time we'd gone to the cinema, Victoria had got tickets and the food there, which was 2 lots of popcorn, 2 lots of drink. Way too expensive. Way too expensive. I think if we became regular cinema goers when I move up there, we could always look at getting those monthly passes where it's like, for per ticket or whatever, it's like 15 quid or 20 quid a month, which seems like a lot, but when it's £10 a film, if you went every weekend, then you've got 2 films for free at least, whatever. And I think you then get discounts on food, but don't know, that really depends on, we're trying to be good with money, and what films are out. Long and short of it though, I'm not buying food at the cinema again. One, I end up always just feeling a bit bloated after eating popcorn because I just can't stop eating popcorn. And I did try the American thing of toppers. I put white chocolate buttons on top of the popcorn. And to begin with, I thought, this is brilliant. Why haven't I done this before? Gets sickly very quickly. But no, I think 7.5 out of 10 is fair because whilst this did exceed my expectations and I had fun watching it, I guess, would reserve a higher score for a film that's a bit deeper, a film that has a bit more of a in-depth story or has more story beats, because I'm very, narrative is quite a big interest point for me in my media. So books, it's key to that. Gaming, I prefer narrative-based gaming over gameplay gaming or challenge gaming. I could play a walking sim where the gameplay is limited and the challenge is minimal, but the story is engrossing. I'm quite happy with that. I don't want to play a game that's just going to be very difficult. But so when it comes with films, yes, I will have a preference to a film that's got deep, affecting moments or a really good story. This is fun though. It's a good fun film. The script it's fine. The story it's pretty by the numbers story. It's not going to change the world or anything. But it's a fun film. So if you haven't seen The Meg 2, I would definitely recommend watching it in the cinema. And if you saw The Meg and you thought, I'm not really fussed with that Meg 2, especially because it's got kind of quite negative reviews, I would say, look, if you like a good action film, like the action films of yesteryear, it's worth a go. It's good fun. You have humour, you have action, and the graphics are pretty good. In comparison to some recent films where the graphics of CGI have looked fucking dog shit, which is just mind-boggling when you consider Lord of the Rings is over 20 years old and it still looks incredible. Yeah, I really enjoy it. Well worth the watch. So, that is it for our reviews. Just notice Fran's mentioned, and dog survival is guaranteed. You got Poochie surviving, you got my vote. That means we are at the end of the reviews. And we're now moving on to our featured presentation. I don't know if that stalled then, just randomly. It did on my end. Don't know how it came across in the stream. But that was the feature presentation music. We are now talking about the Omen. Now, can I tally up this music so we don't get copyright struck? Yes, we are talking about the spawn of Satan, the Antichrist, the heir to Baphomet or Beelzebub or Lucifer's throne. Satanas Lucifer, there you go. I love that song. If people haven't heard Year Zero by Ghost, it's fucking brilliant. Anyway, we're talking about the Omen franchise. So we've recently had a real kind of look recently at Phantasm. It's a bit of a lesser known franchise in terms of the mainstream horror classics. We've looked at Poltergeist, which annoyingly they've now got some of the Poltergeist films. I don't think they've got the remake on there yet, which I couldn't review or to discuss. But they've now got at least Poltergeist 2 on Freevee, which I am tempted to give a rewatch because I do enjoy that film. It's incredibly creepy at times. But we talked about that. We talked about a couple other things. We've looked at Insidious as well, more modern. And what I will say is that when we get to October, we will take a look at the Exorcist series. This is making me put myself in for some pain, because I will, for that, try and rewatch the Exorcist films. I haven't rewatched the Omen films. I've done a first-time watch of one of them recently. But for The Exorcist, one, I keep meaning to rewatch the original because I love it. My opinion of it has changed so much from when I first watched it as a kid, thinking, what's all the fuss about, becoming one of my favourites. But it does have some shite in the series. But there's a new film coming out, The Exorcist I don't know what to think. I'm really tempering my expectations because the trailer looks like it could go either way. David Gordon Green has shown himself to be a capable director of horror, but we've discussed ad nauseum how some of his films have gone. So who knows? But when we get to October, ideally, either as a lead-in to the release of Exorcist Believer, we'll do a show on the Exorcist film series, which will include the TV series. That needs to get its flowers. Or it may be that if I'm able to watch the film in October, that we do a review of it along with discussing the franchise prior to it. That being said, we are going to talk about another horror series which is synonymous with a lot of tropes of horror and satanic elements in horror literature, in horror media, and that's the Omen film franchise, created by David Seltzer, and it's 20th Century Studios owned product. The franchise began in 1976, centering on Damien Thorn, a child born of Satan and given to Robert and Catherine Thorn before being passed along the Thorn families as a child. It was revealed among the families that Damien is in fact meant to be the Antichrist, and as an adult is attempting to gain control of the Thorn business and reach for the presidency. So the first time film I watched recently was Omen 3, and we'll talk to that when we get to that. There is mention... No, we'll get to that. We'll get to that later on. There's a few little tidbits here and there, but let's talk first about the Omen. So it was directed by Richard Donner, famous director for who's passed away quite recently, I think, actually, or in the last couple of years. 2021, I think. Yeah, 2021. He directed Superman, a number of other things, and written by David Seltzer. It's an international co-production of United Kingdom, United States, starring Gregory Peck, Lee Remick, David Warner, Harvey Spencer Stevens, Billy Whitelaw, Patrick Troughton, Martin Benson, and Leo McKern. The film's plot follows Damien Thorn, a young child replaced at birth by his father, unbeknownst to his wife, after their biological child dies shortly after birth. As a series of mysterious and violent deaths occur around the family and Damien enters childhood, they come to learn he is in fact the prophesied Antichrist. Released theatrically by 20th Century Fox in June 1976, The Omen received mixed reviews from critics, but it was a commercial success, grossing over $60 million at the US box office and becoming one of the highest-grossing films of 1976. It earned 2 Oscar nominations, winning Best Original Score for Jerry Goldsmith, his only Oscar win. The film spawned a franchise, which we will talk about a bit later on. So, as we've done previously, we'll talk a little bit about the film plot, and then we'll start kind of going into, its development, my thoughts on the film, so on and so forth. So, American diplomat Robert Thorn and his wife Kathy are living in Rome when she gives birth to a boy who dies. Hospital chaplain Father Spiletto persuades Robert to secretly adopt a baby whose mother just died in childbirth. Robert does not tell Kelly the child is not their own. They name him Damien. 5 years later, Robert is ambassador to the United Kingdom when mysterious events plague the Thorns. A menacing Rottweiler appears at their home. Damien's nanny publicly hangs herself during his 5th birthday party. It's all for you, Damien. New nanny Mrs. Baylock arrives unannounced. Damien violently resists entering a church, and Damien's presence terrifies animals at a wildlife park. Father Brennan warns Robert about Damien's origins, hinting that he is not human and insisting Robert take communion. He tells Robert that Damien is the son of Satan, that Kathy is pregnant, and that he will kill his unborn sibling and parents unless he dies. Later, Brennan is killed by a falling lightning rod, which is kind of parody to an extent in Hot Fuzz. Kathy tells Robert she wants an abortion, which he opposes. Damien knocks Kathy over a railing to the floor below, injuring her and causing a miscarriage. Photographer Keith Jennings notices shadows in photographs of the nanny and Father Brennan that presage their deaths. Keith shows Robert the photos along with news clippings of biblical passages that suggest that the coming of the Antichrist. He accompanies Robert to Rome to investigate Damien's birth. They learn that a fire destroyed the hospital, including Kathy's maternity records, and killed the staff on duty. They found Father Spoleto in a monastery, severely burnt, mute, blind in one eye, and partially paralysed. He directs them to the cemetery where Damien's biological mother is buried. And I won't read too much further because this is most of the film, but I mean, if you haven't seen The Omen at this stage. In Damien's mother's grave, Robert and Keith find a jackal carcass, and in the next plot, a child skeleton with a shattered skull. Robert realises that the jackal is Damien's mother, and the child is his own and was murdered so Damien can take his place. A pack of Rottweilers drives Robert and Keith from the cemetery. So we'll kind of stop there. We're kind of getting into the final sort of third of the film. But this has so many standout moments, and as mentioned, there's the nanny that hangs herself at the party, and it's these kind of hints that this little boy has these kind of powers that I guess you could say are akin to they're akin to like it's not the Midwich Cuckoos, is it? It might be the Village of the Damned. The story that the Village of the Damned is based on. You know, the kids these little evil kids, that alien origin, can just stare at someone and make them kill themselves or make them hurt people. But you have these hints that he has these supernatural abilities. And these people start imposing themselves in the family's life who are aware that this is the prophesied Antichrist and are there to help kind of shape his future and lead him on his future path. And it really is one of the shocking moments in the film when they go to the graveyard and find not only the carcass of the mother is a jackal, so this child was born of some sort of intercourse between Satan and a jackal, but also that his actual child had been murdered, hadn't died, wasn't stillborn, but had actually been killed. And that was one of the uncomfortable things with this film, and also the third film when we get to it. That was the first time watch that had some disturbing moments, is the child death stuff. It's a bit like, fucking hell, that's a bit much. But we have that moment. We also have a very key moment coming up a little bit later on, where character gets decapitated by a sheet of glass. And obviously I wasn't around when this film came out in the 70s, but I remember seeing these documentaries before I actually saw the film. I think it might have been on Bravo TV. They'd have like 20 scariest moments in films, or top 10 scariest moments, things like that. That was where I got my first introduction to The Exorcist Part 3, because that's got one of the best jump scares in cinema. But also introduced this scene with the flying sheet of glass, and how they filmed it. Just absolutely excellent, really resourceful. It looks brilliant, I think. But you have all these shocking deaths surrounding this this child, and the fact that Robert Thorn he's just trying to raise his family. You know, he's raised this baby into a young child with his wife, and then things start falling apart. Things aren't quite right when they go to a church, and Damien just freaks out at the sight of it to the point that they have to turn around and go home. These events with the miscarriage and all the information that he's hearing, and then seeing what actually happened to his child, and you know what was in the grave of the mother of, you know, Damien, leads him to the point of how is this real? Can this be real, that I am raising the Antichrist? And what can I do about this? And it leads to quite a shocking finale. It's an excellent film. It's an absolute classic. And I would say, if people have Disney Plus, the Omen films, and that's the trilogy and the remake, are on Disney Plus. So definitely have to check them out. So, according to producer Harvey Bernhard, the idea of a motion picture about the Antichrist came after a discussion about the Bible and Bob Munger, a friend of Bernhard's. When Munger told him about the idea in 1973, the producer immediately contacted screenwriter David Seltzer and hired him to write a screenplay. It took a year for Seltzer to write the script. The movie was considered by Warner Brothers Pictures, but the project did not move forward until optioned by Alan Ladd Jr. of 20th Century Fox. Seltzer and Donner differed over the film's message. Donner favoured an ambiguous reading of the script under which it would be left for the audience to decide whether Damien was the Antichrist or whether the series of violent deaths in the film were all just a string of unfortunate accidents. Seltzer rejected the ambiguity favoured by Donner and pressed for an interpretation of his script that left no doubt for the audience that Damien Thorn was the Antichrist and that all of the deaths in the film were caused by the malevolent power of Satan, the interpretation that Bernhard chose to go with. I mean, I like that. I think if this was a film that came out now and it was like, oh, well, was it Satan or was it just an accident? For me, I'd probably be like, well, if it was just Satan, I think that would be a lot more interesting. Yeah, it's a classic, a stone cold classic. And like you say, it won an Academy Award for the soundtrack, and it went on to prompt a number of sequel novels. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, right. Yeah, I got sidetracked because it was talking about a whole bunch of random books that I've never heard of. So I'm trying to find where there was that. I'm sure that with this there is a scene where something went wrong or there is some cursed element around this, because similar to Poltergeist, I'm sure, and The Exorcist, I'm sure that there were some deaths associated with the Omen, which led it to be known as a cursed film. So let's just kind of have a look through here. So Bernhard claims Gregory Peck had been the choice to portray Ambassador Thorn from the beginning. Peck got involved with the project through his agent, who was friends with the producer. After reading the script, Peck reportedly liked the idea that it was more of a psychological thriller rather than a horror film, and agreed to star in it. He was at first displeased with the props and effects for making the death scenes, but was relieved to find how restrained and non-exploitative they were in the final film. Despite Bernhardt's claim, there were other actors considered for the role because studios were reluctant to cast Peck as a child killer. Warner Brothers Pictures thought the role would be ideal for Oliver Reed. William Holden had also been approached for the role but turned it down, claiming he did not want to star in a film about the devil. Holden would later portray Thorne's brother, Richard, in the sequel, Damien the Omen 2. A firm offer was made to Charlton Heston in 1975, but he turned down the part, not wanting to spend an entire winter alone in Europe, and also concerned that the film might have an exploitative feel if not handled carefully. Roy Scheider, Dick Van Dyke, and Charles Bronson were also considered for the role of Robert Thorne. Dick Van Dyke turned down the role because of the violence and gore. I can't really see where there was a moment of drama relating to this in terms of real life. I'm sure someone associated with the film passed in mysterious circumstances, but it's not mentioned on the Wikipedia page, so maybe I'm getting films mixed up here. Quite possibly. But yes, it was a 2.8 million budget, made 60.9 million in the US box office, and due to that success, it then led, just a couple of years later, to Damien Omen 2. This is... Oh, I've got these in the wrong order. There we go. It is a supernatural horror film from 1978, directed by Don Taylor, and the second installment of the series. Stars William Holden and Lee Grant, with Jonathan Scott Taylor, Robert Foxworth, Lou Ayres, Sylvia Sidney, Lance Henriksen, Ian Hendy, and Leo McKern. Set 7 years after the first film, it follows a now pubescent Damien Thorn as he begins to realise his destiny as the Antichrist. Franchise producer Harvey Bernhard wrote the screen story, with a screenplay by Stanley Munn and Mike Hodges. Hodges was the original director, but was fired and replaced by Don Taylor early in production. Unlike the first film, which was shot in England and Italy, filming of the sequel took place primarily in Chicago, Illinois, and Wisconsin, along with Israel. It was released by 20th Century Fox on June 9th, 1978, and received mixed reviews from critics. So 1 week after the events of the first film, archaeologist Carl Bergenhagen learns that Damien Thorn is still alive. Bergenhagen asks his friend Michael Morgan to deliver a box to Damien's new guardian, explaining that Damien is the Antichrist and the box contains the 7 daggers of Megiddo needed to kill him. When Morgan expresses skepticism, Bugenhagen takes him... I wondered why I recognised that name. Bugenhagen. Isn't that a wrestler? Getting booged up. When Morgan expresses skepticism, Bugenhagen takes him to a local ruin to see the mural of Yigel's wall, which was said to have been drawn by a monk who had visions of the Antichrist as he would appear from birth to adulthood. Morgan believes him upon seeing Damien's face painted on the mural, but both he and Bugenhagen are buried alive after the ruins abruptly collapse. 7 years later, the 12-year-old Damien is living in Chicago with his industrialist uncle Richard Thorn and Richard's wife Anne. Damien gets along well with his cousin Mark, with whom Damien is enrolled in a military academy, but is despised by Richard's aunt Marion, who sees him as a bad influence on Mark and threatens to cut Richard out of her will if he does not separate the two boys. Late one night, Marion suffers a fatal heart attack after being scared by a raven that appears in her room. Over the following days, a number of other bizarre incidents surrounding the Thorn family occur. A photojournalist who tries to interview Richard is run over by a truck after being blinded by a raven attack, which I had completely forgotten about that moment until pulling up the pictures for this. Yeah, a woman gets her eyes pecked out by ravens. Brutal. A senior manager of Thorn Industries, a corporation owned by the family, drowns in a frozen lake, and 2 other employees are suffocated by toxic fumes following an unexpected gas leak at a factory plant. The latter incident also sickens Damien's class, who were visiting the plant at the time. At the hospital, Damien is the only student found to be unaffected by the fumes, but a doctor suggests keeping him in the hospital as a precaution. The doctor later discovers that Damien's marrow cells resemble those of a jackal, but is killed by a falling elevator cable before he can report his findings. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's in an elevator, it drops, and the elevator cable snaps and slices him in half. Yeah, and then we get one of the more shocking moments, which I remember seeing as a kid and thinking, that is just crazy, because I didn't quite understand what was happening, but it's when Damien is trying to enlist his cousin Mark to join him in his rise for power, because it's like, look, I am the Antichrist, and yeah, come on, be my pal, let's go up to run this shit. Mark refuses, so Damien causes an aneurysm in his cousin's brain. And it's quite a shocking scene because he's just sort of staring at him like, I don't want to do this, but I will, while his cousin's screaming in pain, holding his head, writhing around before dying. It's pretty crazy. But this was written by David Seltzer. Well, David Seltzer, who wrote the first film screenplay, was asked by the producers to write a second. He refused, for he had no interest in writing sequels. Years later, he commented that if he had written the story for the second Omen, he would set it the day after the first film, with Damien, a child, living in the White House. With Seltzer turning down Omen 2, producer Harvey Bernhard duly outlined the story himself, and Stanley Mann was hired to write the screenplay. Earliest drafts presented Damien as a teenager and featured a female love interest. The love interest was deleted in the final film. Award-winning veteran actor William Holden was considered to star as Robert in the first film, but turned it down. Gregory Peck selected his replacement, and the Omen went on to be a huge hit, but Holden made sure he did not turn down the part of protagonist Richard Thorn in the sequel. Lee Grant, another Oscar winner, was a fan of the first Omen and accepted enthusiastically the role of Anne Thorn. Ray Berwick trained and handled the crows used for several scenes in the film. Live birds and a crow puppet were used for the attack on photojournalist Joan Hart. Berwick was also trained the avian actors in The Birds for Alfred Hitchcock. Leo McKern reprises his role as Carl Bugenhagen from the original film. McKern is the only cast member of the series to appear as the same character in more than one installment, although actor Tommy Dugan appears in the first and third installments of the series as different characters. Ooh, Damien, Omen 2 is the film debut of Mishach Taylor, played Dr. Kane. So, there are some issues with the director here. So, under Mike Hodges, Richard Donner, director of the first Omen movie, was not available to direct the sequel as he was busy working on Superman. British director Mike Hodges was hired to helm the movie. 4 weeks into principal photography, the producers fired Hodges, claiming his working methods were too slow and placed the film behind schedule. Hervey Bernhard cited a demonstrative instance where Hodges spent half a day's filming setting up a single shot of Damien arriving at the military academy in order to place a bonfire in the foreground. Hodges maintained a screenwriter's credit on the finished film. In later interviews, Hodges commented sanguinely on his experiences working on Omen 2. Bernhard replaced Hodges with Don Taylor, who had a reputation for finishing films on time and under budget. Taylor reshot several of Hodges' scenes, though several of the early director's takes remain in the final film, including the entire opening sequence in Jerusalem, some of the footage at the factory and at the military academy, the dinner where Aunt Marion shows her concern about Damien. Lance Henriksen expressed frustration that Taylor cut most of his role and character development. Taylor also added the twist ending of Anne Thorn being a secret disciple of Damien who kills Richard in the climax. Oh, okay. Forgot about that. So I enjoy this film, and I think the key thing for me and especially after having seen The Omen 3, which we'll talk about shortly, having seen the trilogy now, whether this was because they were all made quite close together or the production teams or studio behind it were quite similar or same sort of people, but it's a series where they all have a similar tone and feel and a look in terms of presentation. Obviously the quality is going to vary from entry to entry depending on your preference, but they're very clear continuations. It's not like your horror sequel where, oh, we're going to ignore some parts from the prior film, or this looks completely different. You know, it's like it's a different kind of segment of the story, or it's taking the name, but it's just going, right, well, let's just tell a different take on it. They are direct kind of continuations which expand the story and kind of lead in the same sort of direction, really. It's a fine film. It's got the shocking deaths of the elevator moment, which I think some people tend to get mixed up some of the deaths that happen in Omen 2 with the first film. The eye pecking and the elevator are quite standout ones, but people don't really talk about the sequels in the same vein as they do the original, and I guess that's kind of as is the way with a lot of horror films. The original is the standout that grabs the attention and does the best business. The sequels are always, the sequels. They don't do quite as well usually. But this was made for a budget of $6.8 million, and it took $26.5 million at the US and Canadian box office. Let's move on now to one that I watched this week, which is The Final Conflict. The last chapter in the Omen trilogy. Now, if you just watch the film, the opening just says The Final Conflict. There's no mention, really, of the Omen. So I think and the poster artwork says just The Final Conflict. But I think the Omen 3 had to kind of be added just to, make sure that it is connected. Because your general Joe public, especially prior to the internet, how are they going to know that The Final Conflict has anything to do with the prior films? And maybe that's a deliberate choice, not sure. But it's also, simply known in some areas as The Final Conflict. It's a 1981 supernatural horror film directed by Graham Baker. Third installment of the Omen series, starring Sam Neill, Lisa Harrow, and Rosanna Brazzi. It tells the progression of the now adult Damien Thorn to a position of earthly power, set against the countdown to the Second Coming and attempts of a group of priests to kill the Antichrist. Richard Donner, director of the first film, returns as executive producer, as released in theatres March 20th, 1981. So, following the grisly suicide of the US ambassador to the United Kingdom, 33-year-old international conglomerate CEO Damien Thorn is appointed in his place, an office his adoptive father, Robert Thorn, once held. Having fully embraced his unholy lineage, and having run his company for 7 years, Damien now attempts to reshape his destiny by halting the second coming of Christ. However, Father De Carlo, a priest from the Subiaco monastery, where Father Spiletto spent his final days, and who has observed Damien from afar since his adopted father's death, acquires the 7 daggers of Megiddo that were dug out of the ruins of the Thorn Museum in Chicago, following the fire at the end of the second film. Joined by 6 other priests, De Carlo plans to kill Damien while finding the Christ child. Meanwhile, Damien becomes romantically involved with journalist Kate Reynolds. Learning of his assassins and killing all but De Carlo over time, he proceeds to mould Reynolds' young son Peter into a disciple by playing on the boy's desire for a father figure. After the alignment of stars in the Cassiopeia, that's the name of a Japanese jazz fusion band. Okay. After the alignments of the stars in the Cassiopeia constellation on March 24th, 81, generating what was described as a second star of Bethlehem, Damien realizes that it is a sign of the second coming and orders his followers to kill all boys born in England on the morning of March 24th, 1981, to prevent the Christ's return to power. A week after a string of 31 infant deaths, Reynolds encounters De Carlo and he reveals Damien's true identity to her while giving her evidence of the murders. The following morning, she discovers Damien's birthmark. Okay, so I mentioned in the group chat, the Discord, that I'd finally got around to watching Damien, the final conflict, the Omen 3. And that, wow, it's quite disturbing in places. Yeah, I mean, it's got a couple of deaths that are quite notable, as the other films do, in terms of a person falling from a staging area on a TV show, falling through some glass or something like that, and then he sets on fire. It's quite dramatic, and there's also a fox hunting scene, which is, don't really want to see fox hunting, but it led to a bit of a trap, which does not go well for the trappers. But once Damien then decides we need to kill all the babies born on this day, fucking hell. And it's not a foreign concept. I mean, if anyone watched Game of Thrones, that occurred when there's paranoia about the king having bastard children. And so all of his potential bastards are murdered. And they don't do it in Game of Thrones in a overtly graphic nature, because that's just insanely, that's way too far. But it's a concept. It's like, oh, that's a bit, ugh. And in this, they don't show any of these kids being killed. But it's enough of the setup to be like, this is a bit grim. I mean, they have a moment which is kind of, I guess, similar to Ghostbusters 2 in regards to something causes a pram to roll down a street and roll into oncoming traffic. But unlike Ghostbusters 2, which is a family film, the pram gets hit by a car. And then a priest does something when he's baptizing a kid. You don't see exactly what. I think the implication may be that he held the child under the water. And also someone with an iron, again, like an ironing board, like an iron. Again, it's not graphic, so you don't see these things, but the implication is enough for me as a viewer to just be like, that's a bit nasty. That's a bit too nasty. Vix, that's taken straight from the Bible. What's that? Which bit's that? But those moments, like I say, not graphic, because that would just be far too much. But the implication of killing all the firstborn, all the males born, unless that's the bit you're mentioning, killing all the babies. Yeah, that's or the plague and all that stuff, and yeah, still grim, still a grim concept in a film. But this. It's an all right film. I mean, as the film went on, I kind of get why it's not really held in the same regard as the first film, but then I guess the second film isn't really. They're all kind of seen as lesser than, but it does continue the story. Now, looking into this, there'd been some criticism at the time that the finale, the apocalypse, was a bit of a damp squib, and surely we've been leading to hell on earth and the end times. Yeah, I can see that, but that thought never crossed my mind because this is 1981. Can you imagine a film from the early 80s in the vein of The Omen, accurately showing a horrifying depiction of hell on earth or how that would look? In today's technology, yeah, you could probably go that route, but the furthest we get is him having a congregation with his disciples, and you see the vast volume of his disciples, and that's quite a kind of freaky moment because it gives you an idea of the scope of the reach of the Antichrist and Satan. But outside of that, it's all right. It's all right. I mean, it ultimately becomes a story of a bunch of priests trying and failing to stab him in the back with these blades and keep losing the blades. And I guess having these 7 blades of Megiddo means a number of them, these attempts can fail, so he then has the blades in his possession, because ultimately, if only certain things can kill you, you would want to be in possession of those things, because you're not going to kill yourself, are you? So you'd want to go, right, I've got all of these, therefore no one can kill me. Fuck you. So it makes sense, but the final conflict is okay. I'm glad I've watched it now. It's fine. It's an alright film. But yeah, just those moments of the implications of what's occurred with the kid deaths are just a bit like a bit too much. I mean, I get them. It's important to the story because he wants absolute power, and a threat to him. The first real viable threat is the second coming of Christ, which would occur through a newborn child. So I get it. That's the way it had to go. But it's still just a bit like it's It would be similar to if someone was going around going, I need to kill all the dogs in the city. You'd just be like, no, come on now, you don't have to do that. So that was the final theatrical Omen film for quite a little while. Well, for about 10 years. It's the last theatrical one, but it was the last release in the Omen series for about 10 years. It was followed by a sequel, and this was the first Omen film I actually saw, and I wish I hadn't because it's shite. And that is the television film, The Omen 4: The Awakening. I mean, The Awakening instantly cheapens the franchise. It's very straight to video or TV film, it really is. The Omen for the Awakening is a 1991 American supernatural horror television film directed by Georges Montesi and Dominique Othen-Girard and written by Brian Taggart. Just to preface, we've done the deep dive of the films. We're just going to briefly mention this and the remakes. It's the 4th installment of the Omen series, and it's the final installment in the original series. It stars Faye Grant, Michael Woods, Michael Lerner, and Asia Vieira. It follows 2 attorneys who adopt a young girl, unaware of the fact that she is to possibly succeed Damien Thorn as the Antichrist. The film is intended to be the first of many television sequels to 20th Century Fox's film history of popular titles. Bernhard, who also produced the previous 3 films, felt there could be more done to the series. This was the last film he produced. He previously wrote the story for the second film. It premiered on television in North America on the Fox network on May 20th, 1991. The film was given a theatrical release in some countries, such as Australia, where it premiered on August 9th, 1991, and in the United Kingdom, where it opened in November. It was largely panned by critics upon release. That's all we need to talk about, really. It's crap. It's very much a made-for-TV film. It doesn't always mean it's bad, but there's been it really, I guess, depends on what the prestige is of the series it's connected to, and especially at this time of the early 90s, it's never going to have been replicated on TV, um, just because the standards weren't really necessarily there, especially when it came into this continuation of a horror series. We had adaptations that would work on made for TV and did the best they could with what they had available, such as It, Stephen King's It. But this, I remember watching, I don't know, I think maybe a family friend had the VHS or something. I can't remember how I came to watch this, but it was on a VHS and I didn't own it. So I must have borrowed it. It might have been like a mate's stepdad had a whole bunch of horror films and he was like, yeah, right, yeah, borrow it if you want. Might have been it, actually. Yeah, I probably saw some horror films a bit too early that way as well. What more to say about this? Kid turns out to be the illegitimate child of Damien, I'm pretty sure. And then another kid that they're having has the 666 marks on them, which are the mark of the devil. We haven't really mentioned that, but on the back of the head, or in this case on a little baby's arm, there's the little 666 birthmark to hint at what they are. But as is always the case, eventually there was a remake. Also known, The Omen, also known as The Omen 666, is a 2006 American supernatural horror film directed by John Moore, written by David Seltzer. It's the fifth installment of the Omen series, and it's a remake of the 1976 film of the same name, which was also written by Seltzer. This version stars Julia Stiles, Liev Schreiber, Mia Farrow, David Thewlis, Pete Postlethwaite, and Michael Gambon and Seamus Davy Fitzpatrick in his film debut. It was released. What have I clicked on here? It was released worldwide on June 6th, 2006, received mixed reviews from critics, and grossed 120 million against a 25 million budget. So generally, it's a success. I have seen the remake. I don't necessarily think it's bad. I think the remake is just a bit lifeless. I don't know if it's because of when the film came out or what kind of contributed to that, but it's just a bit like it just kind of came out in that period of the horror remakes from the early 2000s. I mean, remakes aren't a new concept, but this was kind of when we were entering the period of what other horror film can we remake? There'd been The Hills Have Eyes. I'm pretty sure prior to this there had been Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Again, pretty sure that's prior to this. I think that was 2003, potentially. And I didn't see this when it got released because I remember the reviews being very middle of the road for it. But I watched it a few years ago, and yeah, it kind of just treads the same path as the original film, but just not as good. It's not like, for example, Psycho, where it's essentially a shot-for-shot remake. Although people say that, and Psycho isn't a shot-for-shot remake; it just isn't very good. But it's just a bit kind of, I don't know if lifeless is the correct term. I'd probably say soulless. It's just there. It just feels a bit unnecessary. It doesn't do anything new with the property from memory or anything that new that worked, but it's not necessarily a bad film. And it was essentially quite successful. I mean, 120 mil against 25 mil budget. It's not bad. That's not bad. That's recouping your costs with a bit of pocket money on top of it. But yeah, we don't really need to dive into the story. The story is fairly similar from memory, just kind of looking at this. Yeah, I don't think we need to talk too much really about the Omen remake. Now, the last little thing to touch on there was a TV series. I haven't seen the TV series. It only ran for one season before it was cancelled. But it was 2000. What the fuck am I looking at here? 2015 TV series called Damien. based on The Omen, which serves as a direct sequel to the first film. So it is doing that trope of going, well, let's ignore the sequels. It's based on the 1976 film The Omen. Damien follows the adult life of Damien Thorn, played by Bradley James, now a 30-year-old war photographer who has forgotten his satanic past, facing his true identity. Anne Rutledge, who has protected Damien all his life, will help him embrace his Antichrist side. Yeah, I can't talk too much about it. I've never seen it. I don't believe it is on any streaming platforms. I think we might have looked at this a little while ago. Let's have a quick little look. Yeah, you can buy it on Prime Video for like 15 quid for the season. Not available just to kind of stream. I won't be purchasing it personally, just because I've never seen it. And it got cancelled after one season, which isn't always an indication, let's be honest, but not great. Anyway, that is it for another edition of the Ministry of Horror. We may do a watch party. I'm going to stick around streaming for at least a little bit after this when I hit stop on the recording. So do stick around in case you do want to watch a watch party. Like I say, I'll just have a quick look to see if there's anything which looks kind of decent that has grabbed my attention at all. Yeah, what should we look at on the next series? I don't have another film franchise or director that I've got kind of pre-prepared to discuss, but I know we had a big old list a few weeks back of potential film franchises to look at, which is where Poltergeist and Phantasm, and I think potentially The Omen also came from. Oh yeah, Fran, that was what I was going to mention. I completely forgot that there is apparently a Omen prequel coming. The first Omen. Could be interesting. But then you kind of know that it's not going to go well because it clearly didn't lead to the Antichrist if it then led to Damien being born for Jackal. Unless we see that Satan banging a jackal. Don't know. But yeah, the first Omen is an upcoming film serving as a prequel to the 1976 film. It doesn't really mention any sort of plot details, but it's an expected for 2023 release. So I guess that means it's already been shot. And Bill Nighy is in it. And Ralph Ineson. So is this a British film? Yeah, it's British actors in it. But yeah, not much is known about it, so interesting. Finchy, yeah, Finchy's an interesting cast member. But yeah, thank you for watching. If you're watching this on twitch.tv/Tezz, if you're listening to this later on podcast platforms, or if you're catching this on YouTube, I have now got into a bit of a habit of uploading unedited, which is probably quite obvious, the videos from Twitch onto YouTube. So if you are watching this on YouTube, thank you very much. Give my channel, which I really do need to look at sprucing up to any extent, give the channel a subscribe on YouTube. But if you want to join in the live chat and help build the channel, we go live on twitch.tv/TEZZIUS. If you listen to this on audio platforms, please give a review, 5 stars ideally, but whatever you think is fair, and give the channel on Spotify or whatever you listen to it on a follow. But yeah, we are going to stick around for just a moment on Twitch. We'll see how long, but thank you for watching.